Now, NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Welcome to NDE Radio with Lee Witting, whether you're listening on TalkZone, by podcast, through the archives of our ad-free shows on our YouTube channel, or by connecting through our Facebook page. From time to time, I like to read stories of NDEs and other spiritually transformative experiences, both from the files of IANDS and also from those sent to me from listeners to NDE Radio. Today's show begins with two such letters I received and concludes with reports from IANDS as well. For those experiencers who would like to submit their own stories, I'll give you an email address at the end of the show where you can send them in.
I want to begin the show today by reading an NDE story from a woman named Linda. She got it to me by a series of coincidences so strange that I think I was meant to read it on the air today, even though it happened, almost 50 years ago. Linda writes, I come from a military family background. We moved every 2 years my whole life. I have two brothers, and each summer my parents would have us visit with grandparents who lived on the river that led to the sea in Prince Edward Island, Canada. I'm now 60 years old, and my first NDE would have been when I was about 12, and it's as clear to me as if it were yesterday. I was the only girl hanging around with two brothers and two male cousins. We were playing under a bridge we liked to dive off. It was a common thing we did, and being that it led to the sea, it had a current. Half of us were in grandfather's rowboat, the others on shore. We had our family dog who came to stay the summer with us on the boat that day, and we were all good swimmers. I, being from the city, didn't know dogs could naturally swim. Ours had never been in the water, to my knowledge. Well, seeing my brothers playing and skipping stones on the shore, she barked out to them and jumped out of the boat to get them. I panicked and jumped out to save her, not knowing she pushed me off to get away. I went under and was caught by the current. I didn't get pushed far, and I surfaced to get air and scream for help, and I could see my brothers laughing and not realizing the seriousness of the situation. I struggled what seemed like a minute as I slowly sank, my back toward the bottom. Looking up at the light, everything seemed in slow motion. I was in no pain, and so though I didn't know it then, my life passed before me. It looked like a movie reel with Daddy in the kitchen making fudge when we lived in France, Christmas time, playing games with my brothers, and as I watched this happy life, I was being lifted upwards toward the light, and all of a sudden I was out of the water and not so much flying as gliding up, 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 and was joined by others, and surrounding me I felt the very powerful elders join me. They didn't have faces, and everything around was white. I distinctly remember leveling off and gliding along, looking down at the world. I had so many questions. I didn't ask them, I only thought them, and my elders were answering me as we continued to glide upwards toward a very beautiful bright light. It was at that point I had a knowing. Someone, maybe an elder, maybe God, ever so peacefully gave me a knowing. It was the answers to everything, a peacefulness I have never felt again. It was as if I knew why the sand existed. It was as if I knew why God designed everything. I remember smiling, thinking, oh, now I understand. Just like that, I was splashing around in the water. My cousin was pulling me out into the boat. It probably only lasted seconds, but for me a long time, and I would remember it to this day. I also remember being very sad to be alive, wanting to go back to be enveloped in the love and knowing. I'm by nature a doubter, and I often wonder if I was shown this at an early age for the reason of keeping me in the faith as a way of my just knowing it is so. I also have been blessed to access people and animals and really know what they are about and know where their behaviors stem from. I do believe I was shown all this for a reason. I might one time have known why, but being alive with humans again, the answer escapes me. And that's from Linda. From a woman named Maria, who had wondered because she felt she'd had a dream, but the dream was so vivid, so real, but not a near-death experience at all. And so I asked her to write it down and to send it in. And let me just read some of her description to you. Maria writes, "This happened to me many years ago, maybe 1996, so it might be difficult to describe all of it correctly. I remember most specific impressions of the dream and how this event got me interested in reading more about NDEs. I suddenly found myself in a beautiful garden-like place. To be more correct, it was an intersection or a section of a road which was placed in a country setting. When I say beautiful, I mean it looked like it was well tended, yet very natural, not a formal area. It was a very joyful and pleasantly warm place which radiated its own peace and welcome. In front of me, a short distance, was a very tall and long line of deep green hedging which I could not see through. Behind me was a road or path made of some kind of large pebbles and sand which radiated a golden color. To my right, I don't remember seeing anything, and to my left, the path and hedge line curved so it enclosed me in a field. I was standing off the path in the middle of a meadow which was extending between the hedge and the path. I was puzzled of why I was there, and on top of it, I felt a profound feeling of disappointment because there was no one there to be with me. Suddenly, I noticed I was barefooted, and the grass under my foot was alive in such a way that I had never seen on earth before. I was mesmerized and looked at it intensely, realizing it's not the sun which gives it light, but it was made of light. Light was coming out of it. Then I looked up and saw that everything was made of light. All the other surroundings were also from the same design. I was impressed to see some flowers there, so I picked one, and I was thinking now it's going to die because I don't know what to do with it, and there was nowhere to put it. I didn't want to waste it. But somehow I had the knowledge to put it back where I took it from, and that it would live on, because the light which was creating it and everything can't disappear. I went to have a look at the path also and saw that the ground too had light coming out of it. It was very pleasant, a very pleasant place to be, and I knew nothing would hurt me, but after I had satisfied my curiosity, I kept feeling lonely and decided to look for people. I had a feeling that I was in heaven, so I thought I'd go for a walk and see if I could find someone to enlighten me some more. Also, I felt like I really needed to tell someone my problems and ask for some advice. This is the part where I'm not so sure what happened next, and then I woke up. The next few days I was going through the dream in my head, and my delight in learning about that place many would call heaven. The way the light formed, everything there, and how blessed I was because of the understanding I had gained. Then soon after, one morning, as I was still filled with the intoxicating joy of this experience, I walked into my local bookstore. They were advertising different new releases and bestsellers. A book caught my eye. I picked it up, and the page I opened to was literally describing my dream in words that I had previous difficulty in finding to do so. I bought the book, which was written by Sherry Sutherland, Ph.D., titled Within the Light. As soon as I read it, I decided I don't believe in this rubbish, and I had a wholehearted intention to forget all about it. But it was easier said than done. As time went by, more and more books came my way with a description of the light and its ability to form and create. Some of those books were of a scientific nature, so it confirmed what I knew to be true. However, it brought me the one question I had written to me about in the previous letter, which was concerning whether a dream could be real. Having said all this, looking back, I'm certain this dream had a significant impact on my life because at that time my spiritual knowledge was rooted in what organized religion taught me. At first, the information I gained in this dream looked so incongruous, somehow didn't fit into what I was then. However, the paradox is that it did fit better than anything else. In this account, a woman almost dies when she seems to be coming down with the flu. She speaks of blaspheming God as she was fighting for her life, but that did not prevent her from finding herself in the presence of God and love when she got into the light. It was 1969. She writes, I was 32 years old, married, and the mother of 5 children, the youngest being 5 and the oldest 14. All the children had the flu several weeks prior, and while I always caught everything from them, this time I thought I was going to be lucky. I seemed to be beyond the incubation period. I had worked very hard this day cleaning the house and when I went to pick up my husband from work, I suddenly noticed an unusually extreme tiredness. He dropped me off at home, and I went to get a haircut. I lay down on the sofa in the living room thinking a little rest would take care of me just fine. 4 hours later, I had the most incredible experience in my life. Shortly after laying down, I began not to feel good. It started with waves of nausea, and I figured I had not escaped the flu bug after all. The nausea was terrible, but was followed in a short time by hard, piercing, knife-like pains in my stomach. Next came a migraine headache, which I never had before or since in my lifetime. Then teeth chattering, spine-wrenching, body-shaking chills, such as I had never experienced before or since. At some point, I got into really serious trouble. It felt like the blood was stopping coursing through my veins. I could actually feel my veins. It started at the outer extremities, tips, fingers, and toes, and began to move up my arms and legs in towards the trunk of my body. My brain was very alert. About this time, my husband looked over at me and said, "Oh, my God, I'm calling the paramedics." At this point, I moved through the dark void of the black tunnel, which I found very frightening because I didn't know where I was going. And then I saw a beautiful light at the end of the tunnel. I knew it was heaven. When I arrived in the light, which was of a beauty that words cannot describe, I was enveloped in love. The love, too, was beyond what one could ever experience while on earth. I was not aware of any beings per se, but knew I was in the presence of God. That is just what it was, being in the presence of a knowing sense, not a visual being. I had a very quick life review and curiously realized the children I fought so ferociously to be with, to raise, now seemed insignificant as my childhood toys. Everything took on a different perspective in that other realm. I was given the knowledge of the universe, which filled me with wonder and amazement. This knowledge is not kept when you return to the earthly realm. Suddenly I was back on Earth, struggling to get air from the third oxygen tank they had tried on me. The first two did not work. I was then put on a stretcher and taken to the hospital. At the hospital, they kept asking me what happened. I was so confused, and I certainly could not tell them what had happened for fear I would end up in the psychiatric ward if they had one. I was still in shock from the whole experience and could not place it in perspective. I also felt they, the staff, were trained professionals, and they should be able to figure out what was wrong, as I certainly could not. 1969 was before research and publication of near-death experiences. Obviously, I could not tell anyone what had really happened or even discuss it for many years. When the first books came out, I still did not feel comfortable enough to even want to read them. It was in 1973 that I first told a dear close friend what had happened. My children and family did not even know. Looking back over the years, the experience has helped me tremendously. I usually feel a wonderful inner peace almost all the time, lack of fear of death. Our brain, or our consciousness, is our soul, which is what goes on forever and expands in the other realm. It is our eternal essence and is only housed very temporarily in our bodies. From the perspective of this other realm, our bodies become completely insignificant. Their significance is only of the earthly realm. While I enjoy life and feel life gets better with each passing year, I feel a longing to go home, and not infrequently am jealous of those who pass on. I have a compassion for loved ones who are left behind, but find it very hard to grieve for anyone who has died. And honestly, it's impossible for me to feel grief for one who has passed on. My faith is rock solid, she writes, and I find at times I have a certain knowing about things I cannot explain. I believe in miracles and angels or spirit guides, and pray frequently every day and throughout the day. It is ingrained and a complete part of my life. My prayers consist of talking and listening and giving thanks for all my blessings, of which I believe I have many. Church, when I can attend, is a treat, but I do not see it as a necessity. This is a biker guy who had a heart attack. He writes, I was sitting in a bar drinking and smoking with my biker buddies. We were out partying on our Harleys. Then it happened. I got weak and started sweating. The brothers saw me fading and asked, what's up? Told them I needed to go outside for some cool air. Went out and sat down on the first bike I saw, which was a big no-no, but I was fading fast and I needed to sit. The world started spinning and I hit the dirt. Lying on the dirt, unable to move, I started to laugh. I always laugh when I get scared or have extreme pain. I was looking down at me thinking, great, I'm helpless as a newborn baby. Then it hit me. I'm looking at me. Gravity pulled me into this dark place. Total darkness, and I was scared the blank out of me. Then my brother called to me. Up here, he said. I looked up, and there he was, looking young and strong. I realized I was in some kind of hole. Get me out of here, dog. He lifted me out of my hole and slapped me on the back. We hugged. I'd not seen him in a couple of years. You see, dog is dead. So I'm dead now, I asked. He told me nobody ever dies, we just change. I looked around and I could see the whole of everything, planets, suns, the whole enchilada. I felt good, safe, loved, and not scared no more. He told me, you have to go back. No thanks, I said. My life sucks and this place is good. He said, it's not your decision, it's God's will. I said, why can't I stay? He told me, you haven't finished this life, you have work to do. Then pictures of my children popped out like 3D or holograms. It was like I was transported back to Earth. I was lying in the dirt again. I sat up, felt fine physically, but my mind was confused. The next day I called in sick and went to a walk-in clinic. They hooked me up to a machine and told me I had a heart attack. They did all kinds of blood tests. They put me down and sent a camera up my leg looking for the problem area, but they didn't find anything. They have me taking all kinds of pills. I'm not worried. I'm stuck here for the next 20 years or so till I finish my job. So I'm different now, way different. I can see what people are thinking or feeling. I just see it, and I'm never wrong. I think about love all the time. I forgave my ex for cheating on me. I love a baby that's not for me. He's my family. Oh, yeah, I care about my family a lot more. I'm more involved with my family. I mean, I'm all up in their business. I quit drinking and smoking. I feel like God is inside of me and I can get instruction from Him. I just have to ask and the answer comes. My anger is gone. There's a bunch of other stuff. I could go on for a long time. I could write a book on how to behave and what lies ahead in the future. My brain has more horsepower and moves at light speed. I'm reading all the time. If the old me met me now, the old one would call me a sheep. This was a story that came into IANDS from a liver transplant recipient. He said, he wrote, I am a liver transplant recipient and my NDE was the result of complications from a follow-up operation. They decided to take a liver biopsy as other tests failed to find out why my condition was deteriorating so rapidly, and this went horrendously wrong. The probe tore a gash in the side of the liver and punctured my right lung and diaphragm. This resulted in my death for 6 minutes. I felt the presence of my donor with me during the NDE. In other words, the donor person who had donated the liver obviously had died. For the next week, I lay in a coma and was aware of myself as a dual body. Whenever I tried to move, it was as if there was another body shadowing me. I referred to my donor as she. When I spoke with my doctor next, my doctor asked, how do you know the donor is female? I was right. She is always with me and visits in dreams. We talk, sort of, but I never remember what about. It's not scary, but rather comforting, mostly.
My thanks to all who sent in their stories for me to read, and my thanks to IANDS as well. For listeners who might like to have their own NDE or OBE stories read by me on the program, please send an email of your story to me at contactnderadio@gmail.com. That's contactnderadio, one word, @gmail.com. My thanks to all of you for listening. If you'd like to hear this show again or any of our more than 500 archived ad-free NDE interviews, go to TalkZone's NDE Radio site and hit the Past Shows button, or go to our YouTube channel, NDE Radio with Lee Witting, where you can subscribe to and comment on the complete NDE Radio library. And listen next Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern at TalkZone for more NDE Radio. I'm your host, Lee Witting, saying once again, thanks for listening.